All right. Well, that's about it for us. It's been pretty smoky here lately. I hope my voice holds up. I'm sitting at my table making paper beads, and I told myself I wasn't going to insert too much of myself into this episode, and I'm not. But I do want to take a second to introduce myself first. Hi, my name's Eli Allen. I'm sitting at my table making paper beads, rolling up these triangles of paper. That's what I'm doing as I talk to you right now. I'm sitting at my table in Western Canada on the unceded territory of Coast Salish peoples. And I'm just going to talk to you for a sec. I hope you're willing to listen, because I'm going to tell you everything. Everything you ever wanted to know. If everything you ever wanted to know was what happens next in Station Arcadia. Ever been curious? You're about to find out. I realized as I was editing that I barely introduced myself. I feel like I should tell you anything about me. I'm a creative writing major. I go to school in Newfoundland. I have a pet axolotl. I have thought more about the American rock band My Chemical Romance than the average person. I write poetry. I play the oboe. I've been making a lot of paper beads this summer. My plan is to make a bead curtain, but I do not actually go on to make paper beads the entire time that I talk because my focusing powers are not that good. Okay, that's enough things. I'll be honest, I never expected to find my voice on this podcast as much as it has been the past few weeks. As someone who is transgender, my thoughts on my own voice are unknowable, and you probably can't guess, and don't ask me any questions, and go away. No, don't go away. Stay here. Stay here. Real quick, I just want to give a little disclaimer that my voice and the audio quality in this will be a little inconsistent, and there's going to be more ums and ahs than you're used to. For the most part, I didn't script any of this, and then as I was editing, I would find places that I thought could use a bit more context, or where I wanted to clarify something, or there was something I forgot. So there's a bunch of little patch recordings inserted throughout the original recording. This is not an episode of Station Arcadia. This is just, all of this information is available on our website, but I figured Station Arcadia is a podcast. So some of y'all who are curious what happens next might prefer to find out in an audio medium. So instead of you reading the notes, I'm going to read the notes and editorialize a little bit. And it's not going to be especially dramatized, except in the sense where I can't help but add drama because, though I rarely admit it, I am a theater kid at heart. Also, for the most part, I have not looked at this stuff in years. So we're both about to find out what happens next. I'm going to go into Season 2 in relative detail, and then briefly touch on Seasons 3 and 4. Alright, let's get right to it. We're going to start with what would have happened in Episode 9. So if you haven't listened to Episodes 1 through 8 of Season 2 Station Arcadia, I'd take a gander to those first. Episode 9. The radio story for this episode would have been about a whale hunt. Some people from the Gannon Islands, Island 8 specifically, go out in search of a whale to try and bring food back for their community. The radio would have been written by Tova Brentner, and in fact a lot of it is already written, so if you're curious, that's on the website. But before the radio, at the start of the episode, Charlie from Hardizan calls Cass and rants a bit. He asks for advice, like how to tell Peaches that he's been fired, and he reveals some insecurities about his leadership skills, same as he has to Peaches the last episode. And Cass is a bit like, why me? I'm not qualified for this. But it's a good character moment. Then, the bug segments are from the Gannon Islands, and we have Axel at her job helping Asphodel. It becomes a bit more clear what Asphodel does. She's in charge of Hyacinth Russell's communications department. She usually has to communicate with sponsors, businesses, partners, such as the construction company working on the dam. So Axel's helping her out, and Axel fishes for information. We see them kind of regaining a bit of their friendship. For a moment, the stilted awkwardness falls away, and they laugh together, have a good moment. Then, at the end of the episode, after the last Ganon segment, Axel also calls the station to ask for advice. So again, Cass is like, I am not qualified for this. But obviously they still try their best to help. Episode 10 would have been an Empire episode. The radio story would have been a traveling theologist, so this is a folklore nerd who travels between small towns to collect the folk stories for a compilation and is writing them in a book. The folklore nerd is also a storyteller, and so in some towns, they'll also tell folk tales on request. So we have these short descriptions of the theologist traveling, and then 3 little vignette stories, these stories within a story. And one of the stories would have been a Gunmetal Steve variant. Gunmetal Steve, of course, being what lends us the name Metal Steve Productions. So there would have been some lore given to that company name that honestly was a bit of an in-joke. Metal Steve Productions, by the way, podcast company created solely for Station Arcadia. We did not do other stuff. We are just the Station Arcadia team. Anyways, so that would have been the radio. Meanwhile, the bugs were still in the Empire, and this is an Alice-centric episode. Alice is sent on a mission to find out if there's more Phlegethon gas in a military base type thing up north. We establish in passing that some characters from episode 11 of season 1, the Spider and that ex-cop, that they did join the revolution in Steveston, but they're too high profile at this point to do this mission, so that's why Alice is getting sent to do it. Alice is on comms with Bluebell as she does this secret mission, to stay in touch, and because Bluebell has, blueprints for the base or something. Alice explains what she's doing, but they also talk about feelings and stuff. And at some point in this, Alice mentions very clearly that she does not experience romantic attraction to people. We wanted to have that in there because, well, we always thought about Alice as being aromantic, but it never, so far, had made it into the podcast in, an actual canon way, and there's just not a lot of Arrow rep out there, so yeah, that was the thought. Alice also talks about her conflicting Teddy versus Vesper feelings, because Vesper does not trust Teddy. Then, Alice finds the fucking war mechs. That is how it is written in the notes. Alice finds the fucking war mechs. Heart emoticon. We also, in this episode, would talk more about Surrigan falling apart. Now, Surrigan is that Empire country that is right in the middle, surrounded by enemies on all sides. Yeah, not doing so hot, and that's where Zed's family is. And also, lots of other people. So yeah. Episode 11. Episode 11 would have been a Talsoria episode. The radio story would have been a cyberpunk retelling of the Narcissus folktale from Greek mythology, in which, in this case, Narcissus is a Twitch streamer. Not actually Twitch, but an equivalent of Twitch. The bugs for this episode, you have already listened to. They're on the podcast feed. So remember, at the end of those bug segments, the prince returns, Thesia. Well, we also learn in that episode that Cass was very involved in the Talsorian Revolution. In fact, Cass was the prophet. There was this team of 2 that was sort of the figureheads of the revolution, the prince and the prophet. Cass was the prophet, and now the prince, thought to be dead, Cass's lover, has returned. So in the radio, obviously, Cass reacts. That's all that I have in my notes. Cass reacts. Others at the station may need to intervene / come chat. Episode 12 begins with the radio. Cass freaks out about Thesia Kant. Pretty big deal. The radio story for this episode would have been called The Train Stoppers, about a gang of miscreant youths and Hardizan that fuck with the local rail system, and the difference between breaking the rules when you're rich versus when you're poor. In the bugs, Peaches meets the new boss. Abraham Dryden now seems to be in charge where Charlie was. Peaches goes over to Charlie's after work and they talk money, like Charlie's finances and job prospects, and the future of the revolution, like what the firing means for them. They realize they need a new headquarters, because of course they were using Charlie's office at the job he was fired from. This is Charlie's wake-up call. He doesn't have a job left to lose, so he can take action. They decide they need to build up to something big eventually, not just harm reduction. But what? Violence won't help. Maybe Axel has an idea. So that's when they call Axel, and she tells them they need to strike. And they're like, what is a strike? And then she explains what a strike is. Episode 13. Back to Talsoria. The radio story for this episode would have dealt with the ideas about computer consciousness. So this mad scientist type puts their body and their consciousness into a computer, but it's the ship of Theseus question. Are they really still themselves at the end of the day once they've done all this? In The Bugs, after walking out of a Revolution meeting, Memory listens to a missed call voicemail from one of their parents. The parent promises that, though they do need to work, they are going to try harder. Memory responds out loud, saying stuff like, "You've said this before, nothing changes." But in the end, Memory wants to believe it. Thesia takes this opportunity to connect with Memory, and they have this nice, mentor-mentee moment. Thesia talks a bit more about herself, kind of sums up her escape, but it's told in a really heroic way. Back in the radio booth, Cass picks up that Thesia is being slightly strange. Maybe a detail is off. But Cass totally writes it off as a trauma/memory thing and wants to get back to her. Thesia is also more confident and more charismatic of a voice than she used to be. She used to be all about plans and ideas, and Cass was the one doing the convincing. So, a little weird. Episode 14. I took a little break before this to do some editing, and I noticed that I've been saying bug segments instead of cutaway segments, and this is definitely not the first time that any of us in the production team have made this mistake. What could that mean? Honestly, that's what we call them behind the scenes, and I'm just going to keep rolling with that terminology. We'll unpack that eventually. Meanwhile, episode 14. The bugs for this episode are posted on our podcast feed, so I'm not going to recap them. I'll just let you know that the radio story for this episode would have been a love story inspired by The Little Mermaid, which tells the story of Axel's parents, Pat and Doria, in which Pat is from the Empire, and Doria is from a small town, Island 1, in the Gannon Islands, and Pat, who is a soldier, obviously, Empire, washes up on the shore. He was shipwrecked in a naval battle and managed to cling on to part of the ship, and Doria finds him passed out and injured on the beach and secretly nurses him back to health. And they fall in love, and Pat ends up staying there, and it's this story about this cross-cultural connection. And in fact, it is written, the draft of it, so you can check that out on our website if you're interested. In fact, many of these are, and I'm not going to point them all out along the way. That is a journey of discovery you will have to walk alone if you so choose. Moving right along to episode 15. Wait a second, I've been missing a whole document this whole time. So I have this document that's the radio segments season 2 planning specifically, and it's got a little bit more detail about some things. So back to episode 11 real quick, where Cass freaks the fuck out about Thesia being back. I have written here that she's happy, overwhelmed, in shock, anger that she hadn't known before, frantic to find a way to contact Thesia. Just goes through all 5 stages of grief at once, just spiraling. Cass asks Lysol for tech help to try and contact Thesia, and then the two of them are spinning out trying to find a way to do it. Joe walks in to be the voice of reason and provide emotional support for Cass, and is also like, no, you can't just sail to Talsoria. Then episode 12, Cass, again we said, still freaking out a little bit about Thesia, wants to get a message to her, and is also a little worried that Marvin hasn't called at his normal time. Episode 13, we have continued talking about Thesia and worry for Marvin. Now, on to episode 15 for real. The radio story for this episode is set in Hardizan. There is this child living in this rich house full of clockwork dolls, and the child gets brought out for parties to entertain, is treated as an object like one of these dolls. In the end, it's a story of the child orchestrating a successful, quiet little rebellion against their parents to get something they want. The bug segments for this episode are also from Hardizan. Charlie and Peaches go hunting around for a new headquarters in a place with abandoned buildings. One of them brings up the place that Eshe found the radio as an option, and they explore that area. They find this radio station and think they could fix it up. In the second scene, Charlie and Peaches and Eshe actually later call with Cass, and they talk about the radio station. They ask Cass for help and advice, but they also get talking about how to possibly contact Thesia, how the technology works, but they don't find a solution. Cass also brings up the idea that they could use Station Arcadia to promote if they wanted to, do a radio broadcast through Arcadia. So that's sort of a seed planted. Episode 16. Moving right along. Cass is sick. So instead of one story from Arcadia, Joe and Zed and Lysol just tell random little stories from life around the station. And as for the bugs, we are in Talsoria. The book club is babysitting Soma while Memory is at a meeting. It's an episode sort of used for world building and character development, where each of the book club members takes a turn babysitting Soma and picking where they go. So we have 4 segments, one for each one of the book club, and it is quite comedic. So scene number 1, Memory is meeting with the book club when Faye suddenly get revolution summons. Faye panic, Faye promised to do something with Soma today, because he plays too many video games. So the book club offers to take over and give Soma a real special day. Avi, who is an only child, tries to entertain Soma with magic tricks and then lockpicking, but it doesn't really click. Soma thinks it's kind of neat, but would rather play video games, so they decide to go out. Dine, who has a 4-year-old half-sibling, takes Soma to the Animal Museum, which has holograms of animals. It's fine. Dine infodumps. Soma is a bit bored. Kyrese is like, I know what this kid needs. Contemplative meditation. Kyrese takes Soma to her personal gym and they punch shit. Soma is fairly into it. And then in the 4th segment, Stitch, who has a younger sister and older brother, takes Soma to an arcade and vlogs the whole time, and the arcade is a big hit with Soma. Episode 17. An Empire episode. The radio would have been Bunker Hill, exploring a location in the Empire known as Bunker Hill, which is a bunker in a hill. Very important military location. Just don't worry about it. The bugs. Just out of the briefing with Alice and Snakebite, post Alice's mission, Teddy and Bluebell have a little discussion about the implications of those fun little war mechs, where they kind of conclude it looks like their side is going to be doing a big push. Remember, the sides are, we have Clarecourt, where Teddy and the lot are, Camness and Bremrig on one side, and then Surrigan in the middle and Westerfield in the north on the other. This conversation also reaffirms Bluebell's friendship and trust in Teddy. Bug 2, Vesper connects the dots, TM. Teddy is from a military family, the Montgomerys. Vesper tells Alice and Blueberry what happened. Sorry, I'm editing this, and Blueberry? I'm just gonna leave it. Vesper tells Alice and Blueberry what happened in front of Teddy, and Teddy shuts down and can't explain himself. This is a pretty big deal because military families run everything. They are like the government, so this does put Teddy in a very bad light. Episode 18. In this episode, the radio story would have been a guest spot, someone from Hardizan who washes up on the shores of Station Arcadia, and the story that they tell would be vaguely inspired by Sweeney Todd, A Tale of Revenge. In the bug segment, singular, we have a scene where Axel pushes Asphodel too hard for information, and Asphodel catches her in it. She's pretty suspicious, and Axel is a terrible liar, not playing it off very well, but Asphodel wants to believe that Axel is her friend, and then she realizes that Axel is recording. Asphodel just goes off and fires Axel. Episode 19, a Remembrance Day special. In Talsoria, this day is known as the Night of Ghosts, where the ghosts, so to speak, of the deceased walk the streets in hologram form. It's a very important cultural holiday for them. Memory's parents aren't able to spend the day with Memory and Soma, but Thesia comes by, and she helps Memory and the book club look for the relative of one of the book club members, the relative's ghost hologram, that is. In the Empire, this is a day dedicated to memorializing dead soldiers, of course, those who have given their lives for the war. Shit is tense, stilted, and somber. Tensions are high. In Hardizan, all we have written is that the revolution promotes the observance of this day in some way. And in the Ganon Islands, Axel shows up to Soren and Finn's dinner without Asphodel after the fallout, and she's upset. They comfort her, and the 3 of them still manage to have a pretty good time. And in the station, they celebrate the Night of Ghosts somehow. We didn't get around to figuring that one out. You can tell as we're getting further into the season that things are a little less planned out, huh? A few more question marks showing up in our planning notes. Okay, episode 20. That was me pulling up the documents. The radio story for this episode is set in Talsoria. The main character is a worker at Port She who packages stuff, mostly domestic shipments, but some international. And then they have this internet friend who has decided that they just can't live in Talsoria anymore and they want to get out. They've heard about this place called the Ganon Islands and they're like, let's try this. So this worker at Port She looks at the records and, again, it's mostly domestic shipments, but then also like weird that Talsoria is sending so much stuff to the Empire, but yeah, actually that's the only international place. Want to go there? It's at least closer to the Ganon Islands. And they kind of try and explain the Empire thing away somehow, like maybe Talsoria is trying to start international trade. I don't know, it's weird though. And then they have to try and find a way to get that box with their friend out of the country and onto a boat. And so they have to try to figure out what the fuck to pretend the box is, like how to get it into the registry of the boat, which makes them question even more what the fuck is actually being shipped on this boat. But any and all prodding is being met with total ominous shutdown. So then maybe there's a sympathetic security person, eventually it works. And then this worker tries to track the boat to see if their friend gets to the destination, but then eventually the boat is just gone, goes offline. There was like, quote unquote, interference or something. So they're like, what the fuck? And they suspect that whatever shady business this was interfered with the ship reaching its destination. They suspect at this point that they were packaging war supplies for Talsoria to sell to the Empire, but they're definitely not supposed to know that. And they suspect that their friend is probably gone, but they hope that somehow they survived and found a better place to live. And then it is implied that this friend who is escaping Talsoria is Lysol, which, in fact, it was. And yes, Talsoria is selling war supplies to one side of the Imperial War. Whoa, so that is some lore drop. Now for the bugs. Wow, the bugs are lore heavy too. Oh my god, this episode. In the bugs. So, bug number 1. Memory is watching TV with Soma when suddenly the TV switches to the news that a train blew up at a station, killing many people. And the news is already theorizing a terrorist attack from Hardizan, but they're still looking for evidence. Memory sends Soma to his room and calls Fair Parents. Voicemail. Bug 2. Memory telling Soma that their parents are dead. Faye just saw a casualty report. Soma is upset, but not devastated, because their parents are neglectful, and so Soma doesn't have as much of a relationship with them. He asks if Memory is okay, and Faye are like, I don't know. Bug 3. Memory finds Thesia and confides in her, and confides Faye a bit worried that someone in the revolution might have done it, since it's a similar technique that was discussed in the meeting, and because a CEO was supposedly on board. Thesia takes Memory's concerns seriously, admits that she also can't rule out that it could have been someone in the revolution, but that there's also reasonable cause to think it really could have been Hardizan. And Memory also talks with Thesia about Fair complicated parents have died feelings. In the final bug, Memory tucks Soma into bed and sings him a lullaby, but Faye gets choked up and can't finish. Half the world away, with no way to actually get in touch, Cass finishes the song on air. Episode 21. Now, this was definitely going to be a Hardizan episode, but the radio was either going to be a story from the point of view of a jacket, or about a bunch of servants in a mansion murdering their boss. So, the bugs were a little more certain. In the first scene, Peaches, on their mail route, now for their new boss, which sucks. Peaches chats a little with Darren and mentions where their family lives. As a reminder, Darren is Jebediah's butler, who declined to join the revolution because he didn't judge it to be worth the risk. Darren warns Peaches about Jebediah's evil plans. What are Jebediah's evil plans? Oh, there's a note. It says Jebediah's evil shit. Jebediah's evil shit. He's going to buy out an entire poor neighborhood's worth of land, evict everybody, destroy everything on it, and build a mine and warehouse and a company town. People can only live there if they sign a very long contract to work for him. Wow. Yeah, that's evil. Classic. Bug 2. Peaches steals Jebediah's mail and opens all of it discreetly to find out more about the plan. This is the first time that Peaches has opened mail. Peaches does this in the New Revolution headquarters as Charlie cleans up the place in the background. Some of the mail is not relevant. Maybe there's a spicy letter, ooh, or something with a lot of money in it as a bribe. Some of it does totally confirm the whole plan, though. And in the end, Charlie and Peaches pick one mail item to, quote-unquote, get lost. Episode 22. Episode 22 is an Empire episode. Same as season 1, actually. To Love Like You. Ayo. Shout out to me. Fuck. It's getting late. The radio story for this episode, I have here in my notes just as Teddy Noir, and I think that was a, noir detective-style story of Teddy from back when he was still doing private eye detective stuff. I'm sad that one didn't happen. That would have been fun. Marvin shows up halfway through. Remember that? Marvin was missing? Yeah. He's not missing anymore. Everyone is relieved he's alive. We would have played up that tension more. Zed comes in, and Marvin drops that he couldn't find any info on Zed's family, and he's really sorry. Cass is like, oh, shit, so you are worried, Zed. I'm also very sorry. And Zed tries to brush it off, but is clearly upset. And then we cut back to the bugs, in which Vesper has told Snakebite about Teddy, and they call Teddy to their office. Vesper, Bluebell, and Alice are already there, and Snakebite gives an ultimatum. Explain yourself. Give us one reason to keep you around or we shoot you, because Teddy knows too much. Teddy explains himself. So we get the full Teddy background, the explanation of his, what's the word? Of his sunderment. I'm so sorry, I can't think of a better word. His sunderment from his family. Sundering? Sure. And then someone runs into the office and is like, Snakebite! Surrigan! There's a big attack. It looks like Surrigan is going to fall. This is big war news that will definitely have capital I implications. So then we cut back, and we have a scene where Joe and Cass discuss Zed and her depression. Joe bursts in, and he wasn't actually listening to the broadcast where we heard about the Surrigan thing because he was dealing with Zed setting things on fire or whatever. And so he, at first, is upset about the aforementioned antics, and then they end up kind of talking about the depression thing and how Zed deals with her mental health in a very different way than Joe does. By the way, if you're interested in more info about the dynamics of these people in the radio booth, I at one point had a little hyperfixation moment and I wrote a whole document about how they interact and get along, and it's kind of fun. So if you're curious, that's available under the characters section on the behind the scenes page of our website. Sometimes I've noticed with that page, you click on it and it doesn't get you to the page, so then you have to refresh the page and then suddenly you're there. You'll figure it out. Listen, we're working with a free website, and it's pretty good, honestly, if you ask me. I can't take the credit for that. J.R. Steele has done all of the layout-y stuff, and if there is weird layout stuff going on, blame it on me, because I've gone in and made it worse. Okay, enough tangenting. Episode 23. I don't even care what the radio is. It was going to be something that I was going to write, and there's a short story of it on the website, I think. The bugs. Asphodel tells Hyacinth about Axel's betrayal, including how she told campaign secrets to Axel. Hyacinth is upset on multiple counts and is like, well, we can't do anything to Axel. It would be too obvious. But I have an idea. Bug 2. Soren dies. It looks like an accident. Oh my god, sorry. I was about to move on to the next episode, and then I pulled up the document for this on the website. Oh my god. Sometimes we write one thing in the plans, and then when we actually get around to writing the episode, it doesn't pan out quite like that. Often, actually. What I've been reading off of, for the most part, is a document with the ideas that we wrote at the start of the season for how things would go. And it gives us a general roadmap. We know from the start that Soren is going to die in episode 23. But the specifics do sometimes get changed in the moment. So I was reading these bugs, and in the first one, and first of all, so we have Axel and Soren at a cafe. I feel like they're always at cafes. I love that for them. And anyways, Axel is saying to Soren, I can't believe this, it couldn't have gone worse, talking about how she got fired by Asphodel. Soren says, getting fired isn't the end of the world, Axel. And Axel says, but finding out your childhood friend likes you back, and then admitting to them that you love them, and then immediately getting pushed out of their life again is. It is the end of the world. And Soren's like, yeah, that sucks. I'm sorry. So Anyways, I had just forgotten how explicitly we had the Axel and Asphodel crush narrative going. Oh, they're so tragic. And way more tragic is the fact that Soren literally gets stabbed to death. I thought when I read accident, I was like, and maybe someone sneakily pushes a ladder out from under him, and then I read this script, which I don't write the bug segments, right? So it's always a delightful surprise to me to see what our bug writers come up with. Shout out J.R. Steele and Tova Brantner. Absolute power duo. Couldn't have done it without them. So, Soren gets murdered. I was like, holy shit, like in the street. And Axel's like there. And like, oh my god. Soren gets murdered. There's like 6 R's and 4 exclamation points. The person runs away. Soren collapses. Oh my god. Episode 24. The story from Arcadia is about a strike in the Ganon Islands. It's the longest strike in Ganon Island history, goes on for over a year, and ends successfully. In the bug segments, Axel grieves/reacts to Soren's death. There's the funeral, which also includes Axel's parents, Soren's husband Finn, and an old friend, Caden Acer the scientist. In the second segment, Charlie gives a speech via the radio. I imagine at this point we've established somehow that people have radios and are listening to them somehow. So Charlie gives this speech, which is this big call to action to have people come to their Revolution headquarters at a specific time and to share the word with anyone else they are 100% sure is safe. As the cornerstone of this call to action speech, he tells people about the evil Jebediah plan. Episode 25. The radio story of this episode would have been called The Rat God of Deadline, in which, in Deadline, Talsoria, a mad scientist type, breeds super-engineered rats to wreak havoc on Deadline, and things get a bit out of hand. I also have a note here of some backstory I wanted to imply in this episode, which is that the Rat God is a former member of the Revolution in the Nexus, but got out. Another member of the Revolution faked the Rat God's death in the system by hacking the records, at the same time as Nikki, actually, so they have no legal handle and they are entirely off the grid. They use no common name either, only the Revolution alias. Alias? It's not Elias, that's my name. The Rat God also used to work for the government, doing chemical, medical, drug creation and testing. So they're a mad genius, and they did some genuinely really bad things. And they invented a lot of crazy shit that can come in handy later. They were a double agent for a bit before quitting to do the Revolution full-time. And then later they moved to Deadline, and now they're doing this whole Rat God thing. Which is so cool, and I am a little sad I never wrote this. The bugs! Yeah, okay, looking at these bug notes, it looks like this probably would have been a pretty, important episode, but here's what I've got. Revolution meeting. Build up to Thesia's big plan. They work out what's going to happen. In brackets, what is the plan? Bug 2. Do another bug. But I do have a note on my radio segments document. Cass remembers in the middle that there's a folk divine song about the Rat King that she also saw in a concert with Thesia. If you remember, in season 1, there was a folk divine song that Cass saw in a concert with Thesia as well. So, call back to way at the start, they ask Lysol to get it off their Synth Tech X, and then there's a Rat King song at the end. I'm also disappointed about that. God, I'm sorry, guys. My hope was that this would be like a better than nothing way to finish off the season, to at least kind of know where the story was heading. But I have to acknowledge that, from another perspective, I'm being a total asshole. Like, here's all the stuff that would have happened in the season, but it isn't. But it would have been great, bro. Just trust me. Just picture it. Yeah, it would have been awesome. Okay, now clap. And I'm gonna be real, I don't know if this is engaging content. I hope so, but at the end of the day, I am doing this for my own personal closure, and I'm happy to have you here with me. I really am. There hasn't been a lot of fan engagement for season 2, which makes sense. We are a dead podcast, but when I put out episodes, I see those stats, and I see that there are people who seem to have listened to it. And that means something to me. Mind-boggling to me, actually. I'm like, what do you Like, what do you mean 300 people have listened to me talk? Anyways, episode 26. We didn't have very in-depth plans for this episode, but it would have been a biggie. The radio story would have been called Pollyanna, about a woman in the Empire who always puts effort into being kind, and the story is told from the perspective of her friend who doesn't understand why. And in the end, she's arrested for harboring refugees. Her friend has a horrifying realization that her only crime was trying to be kind. In the bug segments, Surrigan officially dies and the revolution reacts. And that's all we wrote. But I imagine this would set the revolution talking about how to best take advantage of the coming period of increased instability. We'd be planting seeds of a big takeover, like them possibly overthrowing the government. Episode 27. The radio idea was a Hardizan tech wizard. In Hardizan, a wizard is a term for someone who makes super cool inventions, like revolutionary, like Tesla, Edison sort of deal. And in fact, this story is inspired by Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla, where the wizard makes something and then someone else steals it and takes the credit. The bug segments. Axel tells Charlie and Peaches that she can't help them anymore. Finn, Soren's husband, is upset at her for giving up with the Hardizan thing. You know, it's not what Soren would have wanted. Plus, he devoted so much time to it, and now she's giving up? The second bug segment is set in Hardizan and involves the three parents of Peaches. Peaches is Jesus. And involves Peaches' three parents, Mama Marks, Dad Marks, and Papa Marks, all talking about how Peaches is like their Uncle Carl. Episode 28. The radio would have focused on rice and the importance of rice in all the different cultures, because that's fun. The first bug, Uncle Carl, baby! Peaches comes to Carl, says hi, everyone's doing well. Oh my god, yeah, so Carl is in jail. Important context. Uncle Carl is, Peaches' uncle, and Peaches goes to visit them, says everyone's doing well, we all miss you, and then is like, hey, I've got to talk to you about this thing in super vague terms. And Carl is like, all right, bet. And so Carl was like a revolutionary sort as well, and that's why he is in jail. So Carl's like, bet, and gives Peaches advice on how to fuck shit up. Bug 2. Tons of people join the revolution, including Darren, who previously didn't want to be in it. And it is a big success. 3 episodes from the end. What could go wrong? Penultimate episode, 29. Radio? I don't know. In the bug segments, Asphodel, suspecting foul play with Soren, abandons her mother and joins Axel. That's all we wrote, but I imagine that with Asphodel joining, Axel would have renewed her resolve to really make a difference and plan to be more bold and reckless and, revolutionary. In episode 30, the season finale, Thesia betrays the revolution, and Cass gets to say fuck. That's it. That's all 30 episodes. Obviously, there's more that could be said about that finale, but it's at this point in the original recording that I gave up, edited what I had, and went to bed. So now, coming at you the next day, we're going to echo past Eli's break, and I'm going to take a moment to give you a break from the sound of my voice. We're now going to hear some very special messages from our cast and crew. After the break, I'll talk a little bit more about the fiasco that was the Talsorian Revolution, the deal with Cass and Thesia, and what we had in mind for the meta-plot of Station Arcadia.
Hello, my name is Quinn. I'm one of the writers. You know me from episode 1 of season 2, among other horribly sad ones. I've been a part of ArcPod since the very beginning, and it has been genuinely life-changing for me. I'm so proud of it, I'm so proud of the community, and it means so much to me. I'm not going to keep going because I'll either have to stop now or just talk forever, but I also work on my own original writing projects, and you can find me posting occasionally a little bit about them on Tumblr at Zinabug Writes, ZINABUG-Writes, and I just want to say I love you all so much, and thank you for everything.
Hello, listeners. It is Carolee Rose, the voice of our favorite non-binary communist mail carrier, Peaches Marks. I just wanted to say to everybody, thank you so much for listening to Station Arcadia. It's pretty awesome, the story of this podcast. Not just the story that the podcast tells, but also, the story of a bunch of creative people getting together during a global pandemic to create something super badass and amazing. And I think that the true story of the creation of this project and the story that this project tells are things that we need to keep close to our hearts now more than ever. And I just want to say thank you again. For the benefit of all, continue to resist, seize the means of production, and stay safe, stay moving, and stick close. Love you all.
And we're back. I am very excited to find out what we had in mind for seasons 3 and 4. But first, let's talk a little bit more about the finale of season 2. Cass, Thesia, what's going on? What is going on with Thesia in particular? So the whole season there's been these little hints and clues that Thesia has maybe, come back wrong. But the Talsorian Revolution really wants to believe in their homecoming hero and that spark of hope that she brings. And that renewed energy of hope allows Thesia to convince them to do this big push, this big plan, eerily reminiscent of the last time the Revolution tried to do a big push. There's all these parallels, and Cass is sitting in her radio booth, watching from the outside this time. At the very last minute, in episode 30, Cass accepts that Thesia is definitely not the same, and is a government plant. Cass frantically tries to contact Memory because they know that things are about to go down in a bad way, and they're even trying to get Joe or someone else to, boat over to Talsoria, but there's just no way that could work. So Cass just has to yell at the bug as it happens and be powerless, as Thesia betrays the revolution, and it falls to pieces again. But Memory does not follow quite the same patterns as the last revolution. They do get out of it all right, and their perspective on it is different than Cass. Because, see, when Cass realized that her bionics had been letting the government spy on them the whole time, she had this realization that it was never going to work. It's not just that, in a stroke of luck, their plan didn't go off. It's that every victory that they've had was fake, was allowed to happen. Everything they thought they were doing, it was all pointless the whole time. It wasn't just the death of Thesia, it was the hopelessness of it all that led Cass to decide to really call it quits. Cass couldn't see a way forward. There was no, let's just rebuild and start again, because it was an unprecedented, at least to their knowledge, attempt to change the systems they were in and, to basically overthrow the government. So when Cass discovers it was all organized on false premises, there's no thought of picking up and trying again, throwing yourself at the wall again. But for Memory, it's not an unprecedented failure. It's in fact an extremely precedented failure. And Memory knows that what happened after the last time was that the revolution stumbled on, and then Memory joined, and then they tried again, and then it failed again, for a very similar reason, though I don't know if Memory knows that. But Memory sees now, okay, there's a pattern, and is determined to break the pattern. And it's because of the work that Cass did that Memory has that different perspective. It's also because Memory has a different perspective and does not realize to the same degree that Cass did how much the revolution was being watched the whole time. In fact, I don't think Cass or Memory fully grasped the scope to which they're being watched the whole time. We'll get to that. A little more about Thesia real quick. I don't know when this information would have been revealed in the podcast, but here's what I have written down as what actually happened. So, after Thesia was mortally wounded during the incident, she was captured by the government and brought back to life, saved medically by top Talsorian technology. So she was never fully dead, but she was tortured, psychologically at least, and her mind was broken to provide information on the revolution. Her body, being very damaged, was rebuilt as an android, and during her time in captivity, they brainwashed her into truly believing that the government is good. Thesia was super wrong before to go against the government. Revolution members are evil and must be stopped, and Thesia has to go right the wrongs that she did. Then the government held on to Thesia for a bit, preparing and training her. She went out into the world a few times to train, which is where the rumors came about that she wasn't actually dead. Rumors that we hear in episode 1, season 1, actually. So Thesia still has all her memories, and actually still loves and cares about Cass genuinely, even though she thinks that Cass is in the wrong for the revolution. But Thesia would be willing to try and convince them that the revolution is bad. She thinks that she and Cass were just severely misled as youths by Nikki and other revolutionaries. So she has her memories, but she has different morals and beliefs, and crucially, Thesia does not realize that she's been brainwashed. She agrees willingly to go infiltrate the revolution and bring them down, and to spy on them for the revolution. Thus, in her interactions with Memory, she's being disingenuous, but not completely fake. That being said, Thesia would also be bugged, and therefore the government, which in this case is some corporation that saved her, they'd be listening in through Thesia and able to give Thesia instructions and commands as she's out in the field. There actually would be a scene near the end where Thesia, out of genuine care in her heart, tries to subtly warn Memory that she's not who she says she is, in the hopes that Memory will decide of her own volition to abandon the revolution in this mission. Of course, it does not work. This is Memory we're talking about. I'll take a moment to jump in from the future here, to say that we hadn't planned what would happen next between Cass and Thesia, which obviously would have had to be addressed. In the plans I'm about to share with you, her name doesn't crop up, and there are no answers. If you're bummed about that, be the change you want to see in the world. Take control of the narrative. Get that tag started on AO3. I dare you. Alright, back to the lore drops. This is it. We don't have a ton of notes for season 3 or 4, and I don't know what they are. I'm just gonna read through them. I'm so excited, actually, and scared. So, season 3. Talsorian Revolution starts to contact the radio, Station Arcadia. They retreat further from the city. Memory takes a leading role in the revolution. Over in Hardizon, Peaches and Charlie fix up the abandoned radio station, enough to broadcast a bit, and over time they fix it up more and more to broadcast further. Charlie, and Peaches a bit, but Charlie is better with subtlety, start doing little broadcast segments from their radio. They also broadcast on Arcadia. They're trying to slowly radicalize people, spread news, etc. This becomes a recurring segment on Arcadia radio. Charlie gets on a hit list, and needs to keep his head down. Revolutions become more connected. The Claircourt Revolution in the Empire is forced to contact the Talsorian Revolution to get their hands on particular tech to overthrow the government. Axel strikes, takes over from Hyacinth right as things are about to get irreversibly damaged, and starts turning shit around, even though it's going to take a lot of work. Over in Hardizon, Maxwell gets a redemption arc. Maxwell is that rich guy, kind of unaffiliated, who then, in Season 3, slowly becomes radicalized, maybe meets a lover in the revolution, and gains purpose. The Claircourt Revolution stages a coup of the Steveston and Claircourt government. I believe Steveston is the capital of Claircourt. They are successful, but now they have to, run a country. And that's rough. Also, Snakebite dies. Next bullet point. Peaches and Charlie get married. Aww. All throughout Season 3, the Hardizon Revolution is gearing up for a big general strike, which is unprecedented in Hardizon. I think this is in kind of a, if we don't live through this, let's just get married. And then the strike kicks off. There are heavy casualties, but they hold firm. The Food Island thing throws a wrench in the work. And as for the Food Island thing, that's the season finale. Samuel Garnett's island, Proteus Island, the main food production center for all of Hardizon, gets bombed by Westerfield, and framed on Talsoria. Talsoria and Hardozin have been in a Cold War kind of deal the whole time, fighting by proxy through the Empire. Yeah, not anymore. This kicks off the Hot War. This first bullet point of Season 4, the world escalates into Hot War. Literally just a regular war, but yeah, the world escalates into Hot War. Okay, everyone's at war now. Ooh, Samuel Garnett shows up at Arcadia. He's not dead. Hell yeah. Shout out Samuel Garnett, featured in episode 15 of Season 1. I remember some people in the crew being pretty big fans of Sam. Next bullet point. Teddy has to prove to the world that Westerfield started the war, not Talsoria. Meanwhile, the rest of the Clarecourt Revolution have to deal with the ethical dilemma of, does Clarecourt continue fighting in the war, like the Empire War? Like, they kind of have to, or else they'll be taken over and killed, and it'll all have been for nothing. But then, what makes them different from the previous leaders? There's like 2 little asterisks next to this, and I don't know what that was meant to signify, so just gonna ignore it. Maybe it meant, like, needs more thought, but all of this would have needed more thought. It all would have come under revision as we actually got to that point. We were so ambitious. We were stupidly ambitious. It's a miracle we got as far as we did. Well, not really a miracle so much as a lot of hard work, actually, and a lot of people who cared. But wow, 4 seasons? I was like, oh, 1 season per year. I'll be done before I finish university. Well, technically still true. Maybe not in the way that I imagined it when I was 17, but I am graduating this semester, and I am finishing Station Arcadia right the fuck now. Like, if I don't say so myself, booyah. No, I knew at some point while we were still trying to finish Season 2, I knew that Seasons 3 and 4 were not going to happen. My thought for a while was, okay, we're just going to finish Season 2, and then we will respectfully say goodbye. Then, more time passed, and we were missing a few key players on our team, and just, it was kind of a relief, to be honest. It was a difficult decision to make, to call it quits on Season 2 without finishing it. I am such a completionist. You may be able to tell by the existence of this episode. But this show was a lot of work. This podcast was a lot of work. This show was a lot of work. This show was so much work. This show was a lot of work. Guys, it's so much work. And even still, or maybe because of that, actually, a part of me really doesn't want to let go. Doesn't want to finish reading you these bullet points. But I will. And the next bullet point is a doozy. Axel and Asphodel finally get together. Let's go, lesbians. I love you. The Clarecourt Revolution gang starts organizing revolutions in the other 3 Empire countries. They contact the radio and other small pre-existing revolutions for help. Zed leaves Arcadia and joins the Empire Revolution. Ganon Islands is a beacon in the dark. We have a revolution collar night. The revolutions stage government takeovers and stop the war. Zed dies. Ouch. Arcadia plays a huge role in the revolutions connecting, organizing, and ultimately succeeding. Bittersweet end. Oh, and isn't it? There's one last thing we need to address, which I'm actually surprised wasn't written on this document. The bugs. Why do we call them the bugs? It's exactly what it ominously sounds. They're all being bugged. By Talsoria, you can safely assume. They have these nanobots that literally look and act like real-life bugs, and they're just out there en masse in the world capturing live audio from relevant targets. And likely as not, this information is being shared with powerful people across all borders. I imagine that rich people worldwide, at least some of them, are in total cahoots, all trying to keep the little folk under their boots to maintain their lavish lifestyles. It's not written on the document, but ain't that always the way? So they're all being bugged. They're all being listened to, not just when Station Arcadia is broadcasting, not just the bugs that she chooses to share. The implications to this are staggering, maybe beyond what I even understand. I know that in the end, the only way that these revolutions can succeed is by going through Arcadia instead, by finding a way to ditch the bugs and call with her directly, and that's how we start to hear from our characters. Maybe that's the revolution Collar Knight. It would have to happen pretty late in the game, though, because that's how we hear from all our characters. It's a key part of our story framing device. I don't know quite how they would succeed in spite of this. It does seem a little bit hopeless, doesn't it? And it's not, like I said, an unmitigated success. We've written their bittersweet ending. But it can't end badly. Not Station Arcadia. That's not the sort of show that this is. This is a show that always strove to be kind to the listeners. To put good vibes out into the world. To be counterculturally open-minded. Which spoke of a world where the common masses struggle under inhumane conditions, but no one is singled out for their gender, race, sexuality, relationship status, or anything like that. We said, hey, it's already a sci-fi fantasy world. Why couldn't neopronouns be normalized? Why not let Peaches have polytriad parents? It's our dystopia, and we make the rules. The rules don't say that the good guys always win. But here's what we wrote. Back before the story even started. Under the bullet point, how does it end? The revolution comes to a finish. They don't lose. So, they don't lose. I have a conclusion. But it is so nice out. I'm gonna take y'all outside with me. We're gonna see how this audio quality holds up. Come on. Into the forest. The concept of revolution feels naive these days. But Station Arcadia was never meant to be literal. It's always been more about the metaphors. It's not socialist theory. It's not trying to give real solutions about how we should all improve our world, except maybe the idea that kindness is a good place to start. It's soft sci-fi. It's fantasy. I've sometimes described it as wish fulfillment fantasy, of actually being able to affect change in the fucked up world you live in. But it's fantasy. At the end of the day, it's a fantasy. Can you hear the wind in the trees? Can you hear the ravens? I basically live in the Gannon Islands, I'm not gonna lie. There are pretty obvious real-world parallels to a lot of the world building that we did in Station Arcadia. None of it comes from nowhere. Oh shit, my laundry is falling off of the line. I have to go deal with that. We did have a lot of fun with the world building. And if you're interested in more of that, that's all on our website, linked on our homepage and the behind-the-scenes page. And it's fun. But I can't advise taking the whole show too literally. What are these revolutions doing? We don't really see that for the most part. That's not really what it's about. It's not about activism. It's not about taking down governments and how to do that in an effective way. I'm no expert myself, but the solution is not join revolution, I can tell you that much. In the world of Arcadia, sure, let's say it is. In Station Arcadia, it's the station that chooses what we see. That shows us scenes of people connecting. Who expands the boundaries of our known universe with each story she chooses to share. And what is the station? What is this floating island with this technology that no one seems to have heard of, that doesn't exist in this world anymore except when convenient? What is Station Arcadia? I don't know. Sorry if you were expecting an answer. I have my theory, but I don't know. I'll leave you with this.
You can't trust fate to keep you safe. You can't find the right roads to roam. You can't stick close when the winds rush by. But the ocean will carry you home.
If Station Arcadia has meant something to you, one way to show us your thanks would be to donate to our fundraiser for Trans Lifeline. Link in the episode description. Station Arcadia is a podcast by Metal Steve Productions, run by Eli Allen and J.R. Steele. It is produced by Eli Allen, with creative direction by Tova Brantner. This Not episode was created by Eli Allen, with theme music by Arps and background music by Esme. Station Arcadia features original world building and characters by Becker Huang, Tova Brantner, CVVM, Emily Bennett, Quinn O.A. Feinberg, Avery R.C., J.R. Steele, Eli Allen, Sin, Logan Alexis H., Esme, Riz, Shay Topaz, and Kay Maurer. Thanks to everyone who made this show possible. The last thing on the podcast feed will be the fire song.